understanding that there are so many different layers to what a woman should be. She should be a mother, she should be a daughter, she should be a wife, she should be a sister, and all of those things have such a breadth of expectation for you to fulfill. Whereas men do have levels and levels of expectations on them as well. The provider, the protector, the man of the house, the breadwinner of the family. And there's a big culture of family honor, of family respect, اسم البيت, you know, and you can't like bring shame upon your house if you don't fulfill these roles, whatever role you're playing.
One thing that I've worked on a lot is this idea of like people pleasing. It sounds like a nice thing, people pleasing, like you're pleasing the people around you. I learned how toxic people pleasing can really be to you as an individual.
Amira, Elissa.
Hello. Hi, Aya.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. Hi Hadi. Hi Aya.
Hi everyone.
Hi Road. Hi Ridma. Hi Monica. Hi audience. Welcome to another episode of Sage Takes Time. I'm Elissa. I'm still Elissa.
I'm drinking some sage. I'm Amira. And today we're going to talk about many things, but mainly compassion and the kind of wisdom that comes with age, things that you learn about yourself, about other people, about managing life and yourself, about like your perspective on loving yourself, loving others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why is that so hard?
It's so hard. Which one? Loving yourself or loving others?
I feel like self-compassion is the hardest one for me.
Yeah.
I'm very good at acknowledging, recognizing, supporting, making space for other people's selves and feelings and emotions and difficult times. But then I get super self-critical and I'm not so good at the self-compassion thing. It's like really surprisingly difficult. I don't know if you relate to that.
I do. I think it's not something we're raised to have as a skill, and it is a skill and it takes practice and it changes over time. We're not raised to have compassion for ourselves. And I will say, especially as women, you're really raised to kind of look outward and figure out what around you needs to be tweaked, shifted, changed so that everyone else can be comfortable or the person around you can be like happy or having fun or whatever. And we don't necessarily learn early on to look inwards and figure out what our needs are. But I do think that that's something that I've seen you evolve in, and I've also been working on for my own, but it's hard.
Yeah, it is. It's something that a lot of years of therapy and book reading and friendly conversations for hours has been helping me do.
Yeah.
Especially when you have so much that you're, like you said, you're raised to give towards so much, but as a founder also, and you have a team of people who are like this other chosen family that you're now responsible for, you're accountable to. I try to at least put into the company all the learnings that I have for myself as a person who's working and who was heavily burnt out for multiple years, not addressing it, really not prioritizing mental health. I want to avoid that at all costs for my team.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a word, it's a trait, it's a quality, and it's a perspective and a lens to have that is far too often missing from everything, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to try to be objective, or they want to villainize or cancel people and things. And it's so easy to label things in this binary of like good and evil and bad and great, and instead of really looking at the complexities, and we love talking about it, the nuances that contribute to people behaving in a certain way, or a work environment being toxic, or your own mental health deteriorating.
I think we also have this luxury at Womena when we talk about compassionate, like team building and treating people with compassion, especially in the professional context. And no, we don't have such a rigid structure and roles that are like, it's not like a factory. It's not like you need to do this, put this here, and then this person takes it and does this thing with it. It's a very collaborative space, or at least that's what we hope it is. And so there's a bit more room to instill more compassion in the way that we build and the way that we manage people and the way that we nurture people's passions and give them that space. Those are the kinds of things that we want to get out of people when we're telling their stories. And so it would be like very contradictory not to have that intentionally within the structure of the company and the team. And also, to be honest, we're not always like great at it. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we fall short. Sometimes like the demands of or the needs of production or whatever are much higher than other times. And so there's less space to take into considerations people's schedule or what they're dealing with. But it's at the heart, there is an intention to be compassionate. Sometimes we do it better than others, but I think it's important to also say that we're not always like, from the team's perspective, I'm not sure that we're always exactly catering to their needs in that moment. But I think for me, at least in other companies I've worked for, there's a lot more room to express my personal needs and circumstances and work around them.
In this company versus other companies.
Versus others, yeah.
We set such high standards for like how we want to be as a company, how we want our team to feel, how we want to feel. And if we, as we frequently do, overcommit to things and overshoot our goals away from our capacity, we start beating ourselves up like again that, oh, we did this again, or like, oh my God, we're exhausted again. And that's where we go, it's okay, like self-compassion. It's a learning process. I think we've tried to address this habit that Womena's been in, frankly, since its inception, of always running on this treadmill and doing more than our capacity should allow for. That is unfortunately a part of the DNA of this company that we have been trying to unravel for the better part of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like we only now in this year of 2024, when we're recording this, we've been able to free ourselves from that. We took some really difficult decisions. We kind of like went against all of our previous instincts and made some hard choices and had really difficult conversations that basically led us to say, you know what, we're not dealing with this anymore. And that opened up for a new way of operating that I think is a lot more holistic. At least that's how I've been feeling this year. I think there's, I mean, you can talk more about it, but there's been a pattern of like every December almost confronting a potential burnout and an exhaustion that hits the team after running all year to get everything out on time on the deadlines that we want at a time when consumers and audiences are engaged. And then come the holiday season, Christmas time and New Year's, and the, you know, when everything kind of dies down and everyone logs out, we look at ourselves and we're usually like, we can't do this again. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm not doing it again. And we might not be doing the exact same project again, but we do end up committing to other things that get us to that same place. So we made it very clear in December of 2023 that we were going to be way more conservative with the choices that we made for the amount of content we were going to be putting out. We were way more conscious of the resources needed to put out certain productions and certain timelines.
Yeah, you have to try a lot of different things, whether it's in your personal life or when you're relationships with other people or your partner or your family. There's a lot of shifts and dynamics that happen over the years, and it's only the older you get and the more you get to know yourself more, that's when you can start to have a little bit more compassion for yourself and the people around you, but also to plan your life in a more realistic way, to set goals that are more aligned with your values. And these things take time because like wisdom takes time and
sage takes time.
Like the wisdom that comes with age is very important, because without it, you're not going to be able to really have compassion for other people or yourself properly until you go through some challenges and like life roughs you up a little bit, you know.
Do you have to go through similar experiences to feel compassion for people?
Similar to them?
Yeah.
No, not exactly, because we're not going to all through the same exact experiences, but I think you definitely develop more compassion the older you get because of the experiences you go through. So that's not to say that your younger self did not have any compassion for others or empathy for others, but definitely the more you go through and the more you see in life and the more you see other people go through, the more space you make for people's different intricacies and like their character traits and things that affect them, and you just have a more comprehensive outlook on life than what could be a bit more
Yeah.
limited earlier on. What is something that you learned in the last 10 years that now has become such a like instinctive kind of second nature thing that you apply in how you see yourself, how you deal with others, you know? What is something that you've learned?
In the last 10 years?
Yeah, or last 10 months?
I'm
You're
like
learning
a
a lot.
different, fully different, like not a cell in my body is the same as it was 10 years ago. So there's,
Really?
yeah, I
That's
mean,
a
actually
big statement.
scientifically.
Yeah, right.
Also,
but like emotionally?
But emotionally, I'm like a different human. I don't think I had a fully formed like self-identity, and I still don't. It's something that I've been like actively learning to foster and connect with, because so much of my earlier identity was linked to what I was supposed to be, what I was expected to be, what people wanted me to be, what I was told by the media I could be. And now it's more about defining those things for myself and feeling within myself what is the truth, if that makes sense. Like I can feel in my gut when something is true to me now.
Yeah.
And I couldn't before.
What do you think was the blockage before that was like stopping you from making that connection?
Everybody else's voices. Everybody else's voices were in my own head and in my heart except my own. And I've only, you know, I think 2020 was the first time I really started listening to my own voice and what it wanted. Even when I was thinking about where I wanted to live, I would justify it based on other people, my family, my friends, my partner, my company. Like all of those things could contribute to the choice of where I would live. But me wanting to live somewhere did not contribute, wasn't valid.
Yeah.
So
no, you like shut out your own needs and desires.
I didn't even recognize them or hear them until literally like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or a year ago, because I was such a person of like duty towards others and of self-sacrificing for others that there was no space for me.
Do you think that's common? Like, do you see that in your circle of like female friends that you have? Is it a gender specific thing? I mean, do you see in other women only or in men as well? Do you feel like it's been shifting as people are getting more awareness around like intuition, mental health, things like that?
I think it's very cultural, if I'm being honest. And I don't think it's super gendered. I'm sure it affects women more than it affects men, only from my own experience as a woman, but understanding that there are so many different layers to what a woman should be.
Yeah.
And she should be a mother, she should be a daughter, she should be a wife, she should be a sister, and all of those things have such a breadth of expectation for you to fulfill. Whereas men don't have as many of those things, but they do have levels and levels of expectations on them as well, and titles that they need to fulfill: the provider, the protector, the man of the house, the, you know, breadwinner of the family. Like a lot of those things I think are very culturally heavy in the Middle East. And there's a big culture of family honor, of family respect, ism al-bayt, you know, and you can't like bring shame upon your house if you don't fulfill these roles, whatever role you're playing.
So learning to connect you and what you want and how you feel with what actually manifests in your life has been a learning for you.
Yeah. And I thought I didn't even get it when people kept asking, like, what do you want? I couldn't identify it. I would freeze, and I still freeze, because the second you ask me, what do I want? Even if you ask me, like, what do you want for dinner tonight? Like, how many times is the joke that women go, I don't know, like, whatever you want. Why? Because there's a type of like system that's happening in our brains that puts in these voices of like what we should want. We should want a plant-based diet that's heavy on protein, that, you know, doesn't contribute to like heavy calorie consumption, or we should want something light and fresh because it's summer, or we should want something warm and cozy because it's winter, or I don't know, I'm on a date so I can't eat pasta because it's messy, so I'm gonna eat fucking sushi, like, you know, as opposed to what.
Give me the pasta.
Just what do you actually want?
Where's the spaghetti?
I want rigatoni, Alfredo.
With a lot of sauce.
I want a pizza.
Yeah. I think for me, in the last 10, however many years, yani, the one thing that I've worked on a lot is this idea of like people pleasing. And it sounds like a nice thing. People pleasing, like you're pleasing the people around you. You're making sure that they're comfortable, they're happy, they're safe, whatever.
It's a good thing to do.
It sounds like a good thing to do. It also sounds like even if it has negative side effects, that they're not as like detrimental as other things that people deal with that are a bit more maybe chronic, a bit more heavier in like the mental health space. But I learned a lot by like going to therapy and reading a lot and listening to whatever and talking to friends. I learned how toxic people pleasing can really be to you as an individual.
Yeah.
And I would never have guessed all the branches of things that it affects in your life and how you are, how you carry yourself, how it can define you so much or misdefine you really, like because you're acting a way that is not true to what you want. It's similar to what you're saying, but I would say for me, I would label it differently. I would say that it comes from that people-pleasing side and learning to watch out for that and to protect myself from that and all the effects that it has on me and my authenticity and how I'm truly being real with everyone around me. Not that I was being fake before, but my dealings with people and my approach to the world and to work and to relationships and to my family was much more, what does that thing or person need first? Miles more before I think about what it is that I want and need and the boundaries that should exist there.
You're almost forgetting yourself in that process.
Oh, completely. And I was raised to think that that was a good thing.
Yeah.
No, this is what women do. I'm going to say women. Yeah, I'm sure that's not only to women, but as you said, like from my experience as a woman, and I also compared it a lot with how my mother is and the things that she taught me. From her perspective, were very important and very beneficial and valuable to her. And she still holds on to them to this day, and it's part of who she is. But it took me a long time to separate myself from what my mother is because she is a role model for me. So I always kind of, without thinking, wanted to be like her, without realizing that I have a totally different capacity to do that consistently for other people. My energy levels are totally different. My values are similar in many ways, but they've evolved over time given the changes in the world and who we are. And so disconnecting that, like I can still love my mother and have her as a role model for me without trying to be like her as a daughter, as a sister, especially after I got married, as a wife. That was a huge pivot point where I really had to confront myself and then confront her with things where her response to me was, why are you trying to be like me? And it was so freeing for me to
Did she really say that?
Yeah. Talking to her as a human adult woman.
Yeah.
Not just as my mother, which is also like a space for compassion that I think if I could tell other younger people to make sure to get to know your mothers at one point as humans, as adults, not just as your mothers. That was a really big learning for me, and it opened up a really big space for self-awareness, because hearing me speak, she kind of got that I'm trying to mimic her behavior. And she herself knows that obviously we're not the same person. And so her telling me, انت ليه عايزة تبقي زيي؟ انت مختلفة. Like, you're a different person. I don't expect you to be exactly like me. I know you're different. And she also told me something that was very wise, full of sage for her. She's like, you saw me because I was born when she was like 32. So by the time I had it was forming, understood my world around me and started like acquiring memories that I still remember to this day, she was like in her 40s. So she's like, you are comparing yourself now to me as a mother or a wife or whatever after having lived that for a long time and evolved and had challenges and faced them. Whereas right now, as a wife, for example, this is year one for you.
Yeah.
And for your partner. So why are you expecting your relationship to be like, me and your father? You still haven't gone through the hard shit. You haven't worked out all your issues. So in that, she really freed me from trying to be like her, which I didn't realize I was trying to do, and feeling burnt out, feeling like that's not really what I want, feeling like we have different values, and kind of being annoyed with her for a while. But I didn't realize that she didn't ask this of me, So that's like the people
not
pleasers.
directly.
Not directly, but it helps to also confront that. And that's something that you acquire also with experience and with age, and to confront the people in your life in a way that gives you a lot more understanding of who they are as humans and why the dynamic between you and them is the way it is.
Yeah.
Because when we're younger, we rebel against that dynamic. We're like resisting it, we're rebelling against it, we're in different ways. But then you get to a point where you need to like confront that and figure out where it comes from and what you can learn from that person.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, that's wild. And I
Yeah.
can imagine like the frustration that almost comes from her being like, you're putting so much effort into doing something I don't even
Yeah.
want you to do. And you're like, wait a minute, but I did. Like a version of her voice was in the back of your mind
Yeah.
telling you this is how you have to be and this is what you have to do. But in reality,
Yeah.
she doesn't expect that
Yeah.
at all from you. And the opening of the choices also that all of a sudden comes from, wait a minute, if I don't have to do all these things in this way,
What do I do?
what do I do? Yeah, what do I do? And that's a big shift between our parents' generation. Our generation is that in this culture,
Yeah.
a lot of times they didn't have the exposure to the amount of choices available to them of ways to live their life.
Yeah.
We have the luxury and the privilege to have so many options given to us, whether it's literally simply breaking out of just that, dichotomy of like working or not working, staying at home or being in the workplace. And then what are you working and in what capacity? And are you a founder or are you not? Are you working in corporate? Are you working in a small business? Do you have a craft that you want to start? Yeah, there's so many different things that you can do and so many ways that you can engage with the world now that are acceptable culturally that just weren't the case back then. There's so many different ways to meet a partner. That are acceptable all of a sudden. Back in the day, that was not the case. There's more options for things like divorce now that weren't an option, or more people understanding that maybe it's not just marriage or divorce, but you have like pause or conscious uncoupling, or like, we're going to be like co-parenting our kid because we're not together romantically. But all of these are completely new ways of thinking that it's like what is the paradox of choice all of a sudden? Because now you're frozen and you really have to dig deep to hear your own guiding compass, to tell you what to do. I'm finding that near impossible. I mean, obviously near impossible, but
You're doing it.
I'm getting there.
The sage is saging.
The sage is saging.
I feel it. So
the time is timing.
There was something that you really needed to do last year.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking about having compassion for oneself. And we also previously talked about like entrepreneurship and burnout and all of that. And it took you a really long time to put your foot down and do it for yourself. What was that thing?
It was taking a break, like a real break. Like I think I hit burnout when in 2017 was very clear I should have taken a break, and I didn't. And so what happened was I just compounded the stress with more projects, more effort, more time dedicated to work and less downtime for myself. And that kind of came to like a halt at the end of 2022. And I remember really asking for help in a very deep way from my team for the first time. There were other times that burnout came out, and I maybe allowed myself to take like 2 weeks or 10 days to like breathe and just rebalance and have my friends help me just come back to terms with better mental health. But I really came to you at the end of 2022 and I was like, listen, I need a significant break. And I'm spiraling in my role. I'm spiraling in my ability to contribute to this company. I feel all of these crazy things that don't make sense realistically. Like I was feeling really worthless. I was feeling really like invaluable and useless, and all this like very heavy self-critical commentary was going on in my brain. And like I was gonna tap out and let you guys do it, and then you calmed me down. you're uncomfortable. Well, fast forward, I didn't, so it's fine. But I was really just not okay. I wanted to tap out and just let you guys keep doing what you were doing, and I thought I was making everything worse.
I remember you reached a point where it was like, you take it.
Oh yeah, just take it.
And just keep doing. And I'm out.
I need to tap out. And that was, I know, like if we could just switch the cameras around right now to the team, but I think it's important because it really hits on how much, even though you knew that I was maybe struggling with mental health, or I was like really pushing myself and not taking a break. Like, I don't think I took a legit holiday for years. And when I took a break, I went into like other roller coaster projects that were emotionally like, you know,
or you had
horrible.
A lot of stuff going on
in my personal life
as well.
So it's okay. I made it out the other side, guys. I'm good.
Yeah.
We're good. I have 3 therapists now. I do. So, I mean, it really goes to show the level that not addressing your mental health can go. I was just in my head. It wasn't necessarily anything anybody else was doing. It was all a narrative that was building, and I was spiraling into like a really unfortunate, dark place. And out of the wonderful compassion that you showed me, and we had a wonderful business coach also who was working with us, you guys suggested that I take some time and take a sabbatical. Which I didn't even know was an option. Like an extended leave where I don't work on that leave. Like that was bonkers. Like, even if I'd taken days, I was available or I was answering. And I was just so shook that I could do that. And that actually with enough planning, like, yeah, sure, Elissa can step back and we can prep the people that I was managing to operate independently and everything was going to be okay.
It's amazing that previous to that, I mean, it took a few weeks to figure out what to do, but like previous to opening up about it, you had already talked yourself into a space where you only saw like 2 or 3 options for what can be done. And you came to me and you were like, since I feel this way, like here are the options. And I remember feeling like, no, none of these. Like, love you and I acknowledge your need to take time off, but none of these are like, where are the other options? Like, what are the other alternatives? Because these very like kind of like doomsday scenarios where you feel so like you're not adding any value, like you're not contributing, like you're worthless, like you said, became like a self-fulfilling prophecy so that you couldn't find ways or ends to engage with the team or me or the company in a meaningful way that was nourishing and fulfilling for you. And so it led you to like, okay, so that's not working. So I either distance myself, you know, the options that you came up with as like to present. And that was a difficult moment because I didn't know how to say, but I did. I was like, no.
You did. You said
none of these.
Yeah,
none of these. Why this one doesn't work. This one is not something I accept. This one is not right for you. Like, I won't let you do that like kida. But how about we plan for a proper sabbatical for you where you take, like you said, you didn't realize it was an option. And that's the kind of like, when we're talking about having compassion for yourself and you didn't, even at that really low point, you couldn't even fathom giving yourself that space and that grace to heal or to just disconnect. Yeah,
or to be honest, either like it didn't occur to me that the team and my partnership with you, the company could support me in that personal way, because it's like I felt like everybody works so hard for this shared goal of Womena, and I'm here to support them and they're supporting me in this goal, in this mission. But like my personal life has nothing to do with you guys, and you should never be brought in to supporting me in my personal like endeavors. That was actually, it feeds to a wider thing, which is that nobody helps me in my personal thing. Like I'm stuck dealing with all of it myself. And it's so funny because even though we agreed, okay, a sabbatical, wow, that's like a thing that I can do. And how long can I do it? We had agreed in January, like, oh, cool, I'm going to take it in April.
Yeah.
But then habits, right, made it so that I couldn't take it in April. Like there was too much happening.
Because we had planned, we'd said you were going to take it in April. And then we planned a shit ton of stuff for April and May and June, where it actually wasn't possible for you to break at that point. So we kind of stretched your...
Yeah, and actually, I mean, even like one of the departments that I'm responsible for was business development. And business development in 2022 was not working for us. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that was really like, again, it contributed more to that cycle of feeling worthless and not like I'm contributing the way that I should, even though the market itself was really dying and there was a lot of issues with media companies across the landscape. So it wasn't just me. But I did take that sabbatical come August.
Yeah.
And it was so funny how long it took me to like, even though we talked about it, even though we planned it, I was like, I'm taking the sabbatical.
Yeah.
August 6th, I was like, it's happening. I can't. I'm like, I'm pausing, everyone. It's gonna be fine. I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. Yeah.
And I literally, it's not even, people were asking like, well, what are you gonna do on your sabbatical? And as if I had to plan something to do. And all I needed to do was just get back to connectedness with myself and with life in a healthy way. I had to cook again for myself. I had to like live in a pace that was healthy. I was leaving the Middle East from my full-time home to a part-time home. And I was spending more time in Europe, more in the type of nature that I found like enriching and fulfilling for me.
Which is a movie you'd been wanting to make for like at least 5 years.
At
before.
minimum 5 years, but I couldn't make it because I'm not worth making those decisions for in my head, right? And showing myself the self-compassion over those 3 months, halfway through, 6 weeks in, I was like feeling so much better and energized again. And I was like, okay, cool. So what am I going to do for the next 6 weeks? Like, I'm going to start another project and like get inspired. And everybody was telling me right now, that's not what you're supposed to be thinking about. And then I was like, oh, and Womena, I have so many ideas. Like literally, I just needed a bit of a break where I actually did not check Slack every day, did not message you guys for information. There was like only one human who could access me directly for the most part. Yeah. And everybody was told to go through that human if ever there was something that needed to get to me. And there were some ongoing things that I had to like finalize, but it was maybe one project and that was it. Yeah. You know, like a legal document that we had to sign or finish. But that self-compassionate move for me started a huge trend all of a sudden of realizing like I can make a decision for my best interest just because I need it. And I can communicate that need and it will be welcomed by my friends and family, even when I think it won't.
Yeah.
You know, and then I came back fucking recharged, stronger than ever, ready to kick butt. New strategy, new vibes. Let's go. Let's get it.
Yeah. But I want to, for being like totally honest also about that experience.
Yeah.
It's what you needed and it's great that you did that and it was very beneficial for you and for the company. But it was also very difficult. I mean, I don't want people to think that once you decide that you can be compassionate, then everything else is easy. Like, it was difficult to make that decision, and it was difficult for us as a team to, or for me, like as your partner, to then carry the load for those months. So that's like why it's also sometimes difficult to be compassionate, because if you consider everyone else around you, all the things, it might seem like it's never a good time to hold that space for yourself, but you must.
Yeah.
But I think on the reverse of that, I was like doing okay. I had also been in a more of a burnout space, not as severe as yours, but it had also been a lot and very intense back-to-back for years.
Yeah.
And that moment when you took the sabbatical, it peaked for me. Like suddenly it felt like, oh my God, the stress and the burden and all of that kind of came to a head for me. And it was my experience was with those 3 months made it so that in January or December or January, like the end of that year, I was then also able to say, fuck no, we're not doing that this year. Like, hell no. Like,
we're not overstacking our schedules.
Yeah, like,
we're not committing to too many productions. We're not doing what we've done in the past.
Because we have a great partnership and we're so aligned on things and we do different things in the company, but like for more or less, like we feel each other's presence and support. And so without that, I then started to really feel the burnout that I had been ignoring for years, not just with Womena, but with all the other things that I had done and the expectations of that. And then that was the moment where I also learned to be like, well, when she comes back, I'm going to tell her.
Yeah.
We're not like, we have to massively like be a lot more realistic with our budgets, with our productions, with our aspirations, because also I unfortunately had like that moment, I had passed that on to the rest of the team. My stress, my frenzy, my like burden, everyone was feeling it.
Yeah.
And even though I kept acknowledging it to the team, I was like, guys, I know I'm really stressed. I'm so sorry. I was still being an asshole, like, which is not the way I usually manage the team, but everything was like spiraling a bit. And it took a while to plateau from that and to reach a place where we could collectively come together and say, what are the boundaries we want to put? Like different team members, like you have to say if what we're asking you is not realistic. If you agree to it, then it means that we have the money, that you're not going to be like fucking exhausted by the end of it. Like new metrics for how we measure the feasibility of our ambitious goals.
Yeah.
As opposed to, do we have the money and time? It's more like, am I going to feel like shit at the end of this? Is this something I really believe in? And that's even though we already had said that we built a company that's more purpose-driven, where we want to fulfill our dreams. Yani bardo, we still suffered from making decisions that might not necessarily have been healthy for us.
But that's where I'm saying very often you'll have compassion for others. So if a member of the team were to come to us and has an issue, we're all hands on deck trying to help them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what can we do? Do you need time off? Do you need an advance on your salary? Do you need like support in any other ways? Do you need a place to stay? Do you need something?
Yeah.
Like, we're here for them. But then for me to just justify taking the time just for me, it was a no. And protecting ourselves in advance for the commitments that we do later was also a no. Like, we felt like we deserved to give our audience X amount of things, or just because we have the talent in-house that we want to support everybody's dreams and everybody's projects, so we commit to everybody's projects.
Yeah.
And then we're all like in November clawing our way to this like end of the year holiday, like everybody's struggling, and magically we come back at the beginning of January like a bit revived without necessarily implementing. This year we implemented that difference. And I think that big shift was applying the compassionate leadership, not just to our team, but to ourselves as well. And, you know, understanding that we too can be at fault. So trying to get ahead of our own behavior. It's a chain reaction.
I wish that we could give people a formula or a way to think so that you avoid things like these pitfalls that are unfortunately very, very common in media, in production, in entrepreneurship, in all of these different spaces for women, for Yani, and all the things we mentioned. But I do feel like, I'm not sure if you'll agree with this, I do feel like there are just some things are inevitable until you experience them, and then you can plan better next time.
Yeah.
Even someone can hear this episode and keep it in their mind, but they can still sign themselves up for too many things. They can still feel financial pressure to like accept things that they don't want to accept any.
Yeah, you don't always learn the lesson the first time around. And that shows that even if you had the wisdom to give me the self-compassion, we still spent multiple years over-committing.
Yeah.
And every end of year for at least 3 years saying we're not going to do it again. And we would do it again. And we wouldn't even notice until we were in that space of burnout. And not taking the appropriate time early enough to breathe, to take a step back and like reconnect with yourself before re-entering another frenzy. Like, I cannot stress that enough. If anybody like listens to this podcast and this moment, like, it's not just that sage takes time, but perspective takes time.
Yeah.
And mental health takes time. And everything that you should do, recharging yourself, takes time. So take that time that you need. If you're finished with something, take a week-long breather if you can. If you can have a few days, like use your holiday days, use every day that your company gives you to be off, use it in order to recharge, because that's the easiest thing that we can forgive, and it's also the most toxic thing that's going to come back to bite us in the butt.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sage Takes Time. Subscribe, like the episode, share it with your friends, comment, tell us what you learned, what you want to learn.
Yeah, we didn't make it through all that journey just for you guys to skip past this video. If you've made it this long, like, really show us some love. Become a member on YouTube if you can, or subscribe to Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts. We really appreciate your presence in our life, and your time, and your sage.
She'll keep going if you don't stop her. And we also